I think is everything. All right, the meeting is now in order. First order of business is to approve the meeting minutes from our previous meeting, which was some number of months ago, back in November. As
I was an alternate.
yeah, that's another piece of business. We'll get to that. Yep. So we'll the first order of business is to approve the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to see them?
No, I'll make a motion, we accept the minutes. I second.
You've been a full member.
Well, let's deal with that as part of other board
Well,
business.
no, it's in the minute. Correct.
Yes.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, good.
So then, a motion.
So let's correct that.
As amended. Is there anything else?
Any other comments from anyone? Okay. A motion to approve then with that amendment. Good evening and welcome, Godfather.
Yes.
All right, so we'll make the amendment and then we have a motion to approve the minutes.
Also, make
Second. Anyone opposed? Okay, the minutes will be considered accepted. In terms of other board business, I'd like to break this into two pieces. Let's just have a brief discussion about training first. And then we'll have the applicant that's here tonight give his and her presentation. And then after that, we've got a couple of discussion items, which are also obviously open to the public, but I think in the interest of being cordial to our guests here tonight, we do that. So as far as the training goes, we had initially scheduled some training for, it was May 5th, I believe. It was.
May 4th,
May 4th.
before the planning.
Before the planning board meeting, and we're going to change that date. And Jay, perhaps I'll turn it over to you to just share with the group why we're doing that. And what's
Yeah,
gonna be-
so I had solicited opinions on what the training would, what the topic would be. And we kind of settled on doing a training on erosion and sediment controls and SWIFTs, both the review and enforcement of those two items. And when I spoke with Joe Bravo and Nan on Friday, Joe was concerned because I wouldn't be present physically at the 5-4 meeting. And Nan wanted a little bit more time to reach out to George Schmidt, the engineer for the planning board and the town generally, because we're going to try to have George give some input on what the boards should be looking for as they review these, and also give some input on what the zoning enforcement officer should direct their hand on when there's issues. So we're going to try to schedule that for 5 o'clock on May 22nd, which will be prior to this meeting or this ZBA meeting, assuming that the matter being discussed tonight does have a public hearing on May 22nd. And then it will be both Zoom and in person with refreshments here if we choose to attend. Most of you probably will. If we can't do it May 22nd because of Nan and George's availability, then you look at the 2 first planning board event.
Thank you, Jay. All right, the next order of business is we have an applicant tonight. That is looking, I'm sorry.
Let's check.
Thank you.
I have mentioned, my boss has mentioned in one document, you're about being within 500 feet of the proposal. So I have to let you know about that.
I don't view that as, substantial or material conflict. Does anyone else?
I'm a neighbor and we're friends.
Okay.
Something with them.
Are you suggesting you recuse yourself?
Yeah, I think I probably should.
Noted and accepted. Thank you.
Yeah.
We still have a forum here. That won't be an issue, and you are still welcome to provide input if you would like, just not participate further. So let me just give you folks a sense for how this works. So if this is your first time here, you've got a feeling for what the process looks like. First of all, my name is Steve Oliak, and I'm chairman of the zoning board of appeals. This is Fred, Will, Carol, Sharon, and the Godfather. Ron Brain. The way the process works is that you'll present your application to us tonight. Before you do that, I'll give you a brief swearing. The members of the board will then have an opportunity to ask any questions that we think are relevant to the application. If there are no material questions that come out of tonight that require additional input from you, the next step is we schedule a public meeting approximately 30 days from now. At that public meeting, we give the public an opportunity to comment on your application. And then also at that meeting, this board will go through a checklist and make a decision in a very transparent manner. We'll vote in front of you and the public on the application, and the decision will be made that night whether or not to grant that variance. If the decision is positive, our clerk, Jay, will write it up, give it to the code enforcement officer, who will then provide the appropriate permits. So any questions on the process? Okay, so what I'd like you to do is step up and introduce yourselves so we know who you are. Once you introduce yourselves, I'm going to ask you to respond to a brief statement, and then floor is yours.
Okay. I'm Doug Larson, I'm an architect, working with the RAOs.
I'm Patrick Arneo.
I'm Karen Romeo.
Hello, Patrick. So do you all affirm that the statements that you are about to make tonight are true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you. The floor is yours.
Okay. So the RAOs came to me several months ago about their house on Upper Mountain Road. They bought an old schoolhouse, which you probably are all familiar with, which is charming, has a nice high ceiling inside, but it's one room. It has a kitchen and a bathroom and it's just one open area. So all of their living needs to take place in one open area. So they would like to add on, get extra living space and a bedroom. So that there's some privacy and they don't have to have the bed in the common space. So we did a quick sketch for a one-room addition to the second floor. So the bedroom could be upstairs and the first floor could be an expansion of the living space. Trying not to destroy the roof line of the schoolhouse. And we realized quickly that this lot is not conforming. So the first step I advised them was to come before you folks and get whatever footprint would get them their desires approved.
Okay.
So we did a quick sketch. We haven't designed the building yet. We wanted to make sure that we could do it. So that's where we are in the process. You guys want to add anything to?
I don't think so.
You covered everything.
You did a
Thank
good
you.
job.
Could you, is that the sketch? Would you like to
Yeah, sure.
share some detail with the board about what it is you're trying to accomplish?
So the schoolhouse is here at Crosshatch. There's a front door and just this very small vestibule. I don't have plans of the schoolhouse.
That's fine.
That's just one large room with a 10-foot high ceiling, bathroom and kitchen are over here. Septic system right here. So we thought the best way to add on to it.
Sorry, the septic system is out
Over
here.
here, that's the item that's appropriate.
Gotcha.
We have the. Okay. We thought the best way to add was to do a small connector that wouldn't go past the E pipe and then go up. So we can get something like this with a front door and a staircase with a low roof. And additional living space on the first floor, and then upstairs, the staircase can come up into it. This way, we don't have to ruin the roof of the schoolhouse, and it gets an additional living space. And I wasn't actually quite sure on what the policy in Agron on non-conforming lots was.
It's complicated.
So here's, I realized both corners of this building are way below what the required setback. So I dotted the current setback,
Mhm.
red line here, and put a footprint in here, wondering if, in many towns, you can go right up to the non-conforming setback without a variance, but not in there. So we took a guess at a footprint, that corner and that corner, which is really, I see what, if we're on the road rejection for is this setback and this setback. So, I was just discussing with Arnie, was we actually haven't designed it yet, we want to get footprint approval. But once we agreed to these two corners, I'm wondering if we're locked into those corners or if we want to adjust them, it's now the time to do that.
Well, if we, when we meet next time, if we were to grant the variance, it would be very specific around the plans that you've given us. The other thing that we would ask is that in the past, we have had an applicant come before the board and asked for an area variance, which we approved, and they gave us plans that showed a dirt floor and a one-story building. When we approved the variance, they built a 2.5-story building with a concrete floor. So I think it would be, we would ask if you could, to at least give us a rough drawing of what the building would look like.
Mhm.
So in our minutes, what we would probably do, and I haven't asked the rest of the board their opinion yet, is to say that we approve it. The approval is based upon, the approximate
Mhm.
building that you had shown us, so that you don't then go put 3 stories.
Sure, of course.
Yes. Well, I wouldn't expect that you would do that, but just understand we've had that experience in the past. So it's probably not a reasonable one.
Yeah, we wouldn't do that.
Well, yeah, probably not, but let me leave it to the rest of the board to.
I had a sketch, did I leave the picture or a freehand sort of sketch of what we were thinking? That might be down here, maybe excuse you.
I was like, it's not what I.
Oh, sure, I'm guessing.
Oh, here we go. So we were thinking of something like this. With the schoolhouse, the old schoolhouse, a connector, and sort of, it's just a sort of a 2-story simple building. Perhaps.
Oh, you haven't decided.
Haven't decided, just, or it could be, you can slope to the back, but I don't think we want another one of these, otherwise. You won't get the whole schoolhouse in, it'll sort of go
Right.
on. So, and there's plenty of federal style houses around here with flat roofs and bracket eaves. But the schoolhouse has shutters on it, and it's kind of dark, so you can kind of carry that over.
There would be no more than 2 stories.
No more than 2
of the roof. Okay.
Mentioned on it, outside dimension on the house. Right now, we have it like 21 by 19. Your addition is 21 by 19, and it has part of that 6'6" to the connector. Okay. So the volume is really not 15 by 19. Yeah, but we're trying to keep it small and reasonable and just enough space.
I was wondering why you chose to go in that direction where it's steep and slope, and in this direction.
Oh, because the
Success.
Oh, that's right, yes.
So it is a difficult lot to work with. But
Goes down very fast in the back, and it looked like this, when I drove by, it looked like there was an extension of that line there. But you're high up,
yeah, they're high enough, and we asked the surveyor to plot the wetlands, and we had a survey, and there's no wetland.
yes,
There's certainly a back. So we actually have a surveyor.
yeah. Yes, I did not see where it's a full tax map. Do you have that with you?
Yeah. You mean a survey from. It's per portion, it's a survey.
Oh, yes, very lines are much easier to see here.
Yeah, because when I do a drawing and I use surveyors, I don't want to misrepresent the survey. Surveyor is licensed to do that, and I'm licensed to do everything that he doesn't do.
Right.
And where is the farm? Because if you are, I think on the ad statement, you said that you were 500 feet from a farm, but I don't know.
It's quite a few hundred feet from their house. But they have to put it because it has to be, this was in by.
No, I'm just curious as to where it was.
It,
Where is it in relation?
well, gosh, it's
The road, or way over there on the other side. of
just the
road.
property that he owns is
Yeah,
quite far.
There is sort of a wooded area there for
Before any
fields.
operation happens, which, yeah, I mean, it's not. What's the septic in now?
I didn't bring the diagram, but we have a report from floods. Not exactly what it is, the tank, and it's got a.
Concrete tank,
Yeah, it's got a concrete tank.
just shows the tank, and then it looks like there's a drywall that comes off of it. Or some sort of liquid tank, you know. I don't think fields could go there in that angle, without having to do. That's existing now, better.
We'll be careful not to increase the bedroom count. So, one bedroom structure. So the surveyor has the septic information from the floods diagram that I gave him.
Ron, any questions from you?
No, just listen, that's, I'm gonna say, as far as your septic, that's gotta be approved. If you're doing an addition, and they go by bedrooms, don't they? I mean, I'm gonna say that's probably no septic, something you gotta apply for or not, I don't know how you do that.
Yeah, that would be the CEO, and would have to establish either the appropriateness of the current septic or all we can do is give you some thoughts, but our job is to approve or not the
So
variance.
you're gonna have 2 bedroom versus 1 after this is done, or will we just, you're eliminating? You're gonna have 1 bedroom?
Right. One bedroom.
Make the bedroom that's now catch-all, living room, sleep area, the whole 9 yards, that's gonna be a living room, but you're only gonna have 1 bedroom, so you're not creating 2 bedrooms. Yeah, so chances are, so something can probably stay the same because you're not adding anything to it, basically.
And right now, it's a pull-out sofa. for the bedroom. Normally the county, only, the septic comes under review when you're adding bedrooms.
So I'm saying, so you're not adding, so you're just, yeah, swapping around.
Or not, so.
He has some construction guys on the board, obviously. So.
and how about, you will be changing this area. And I'm concerned a little bit about water level. Have you looked into that?
We're kind of at the high point. You can see the topography on the map here. So all we would be doing is doing an addition here. We can put gutters and catch the water and put it into the dry well. Here now.
Well, my concern is what I do something to, I'm also concerned, again, because this is so steep, when the water comes in, you might.
You mentioned the content preserve. I'm making the rubber exposure and protecting it, and then we get, we see it as soon as we can. So we don't get it.
Putting gutters on the house.
Oh, gosh, I haven't gotten that far yet. I was just worried about the bridge.
Okay.
It'll be grass when you're done.
You'll be grass when you're done.
It'll be grass when you're done, so there won't be.
Some people like gutters, some people don't like gutters. In Vermont, they don't use gutters because it's so small.
Yeah, I'm not making a recommendation as to its benefit or detriment, just question. Okay. Any other questions from the board? Any other questions from the three of you about the process or next steps?
Is there a certain plan?
No. Nope.
So it's just this meeting and a public hearing.
Well, what we do is thank you, Jay, for reminding me. We, under the current process, we send this application with our opinion to the planning board, give them an opportunity to comment on it, and they send it back. It's a non-binding point of view from the planning board. What we seek anyway, just to be collaborative, but ultimately this board, is the decision-making body.
So it sounds like we should do a quick sketch of what it's gonna look like.
I think that would be helpful if you brought that to the next meeting.
And if we want to adjust those two corners, would that be something we would do as Mr. Ferraro between now and the next meeting?
I think,
I think if you stay inside the existing setbacks of the other house, it looks like, to me, it looks like you have a couple of feet to play with.
Yeah. I think
Right.
2 feet in.
So I mean, every time we've ended up in this situation, as long as, you're staying in the setbacks of the original structure. So to me, it's not like that's, if it goes 1 or 2 feet the other way, you're still inside that setback of the original structure. It should still, I look at that as not, no harm, no foul then.
Not more colors. Yeah, more non-conforming than we already are.
Right,
That was funny.
yeah, because this one's really pushing the envelope, so maybe.
okay.
Okay, yeah, we'll come with a sketch then, and,
Thank you, sir.
Oh, no, please, that was great question. So again, just a reminder in the process, what we'll do is, it doesn't sound like there are any material concerns from this board tonight, so we will schedule a public hearing. Give the public some information and data, an opportunity to come and participate and give their point of view. I don't know if you've ever been through this process before, but I wouldn't expect 30 people in the room. It would not be uncommon to have no one. It might be common to have, 2 or 4, but not. And then we'll seek public's input. And then we will, in a very transparent way, have a discussion, vote against a very specific set of criteria and give you an answer at that meeting. Jenny, have I covered everything appropriately?
So to your question, I would say that before the next meeting, you do want to have the exact footprint. Otherwise you run the risk of having to redo the process. So if you adjust it a little bit, make sure you get it a map to Ed and myself earlier, because they will be taking a vote following the public hearing. And in granting the variance, they'll say, X feet from this setback requirement. So make sure that you know what you want to do. The planning board meeting is going to be May 4th at 7 p.m. here and on Zoom. You can attend, but they'll see your information and it will be a non-binding advisory opinion. So I think those are kind of the pieces. And then once I do the mailings in public notice, I will send another invoice for reimbursable.
So you take care of the mailings to the neighbors, okay?
Yeah, we do. Any other questions for us or anything we can do to be helpful? Um, okay, it's a great question. So let me start with the zoning board. So the zoning board of appeals has three responsibilities. We can grant area variances, which we're talking about tonight. We can grant use variances. So if someone currently has a restaurant and they want to turn it into a motorcycle repair shop, they would need to come to us to get approval for that. And we're also responsible for interpretation of the zoning law. So if there's a question about how a zoning law should be interpreted, that will come to the board. You should also be aware that if the planning board were to render an opinion that, for example, they asked you for a 200-foot setback, you could come to the zoning board, and the zoning board has the authority to either agree with that finding by the planning board or override it and grant you an area variance. So that's what the zoning board does. The planning board has actually got a lot of responsibility. At the end of the day, think of it this way. They're the ones that if you want to do something, to build something, generally speaking, you got to go to the planning board and they ensure that the building that is being planned meets all of the zoning law requirements. So we only deal with area variances, how far are you from the edge of the property, and use variances, the planning board does everything else. So their responsibilities are far more complex.
So when they have their plans before they build, and they say you have to go to the planning board on this, or does he just?
No, he wouldn't necessarily say that if the plans, meet, in his opinion, all of the requirements of the law. In this case, they don't, because they require an area variance, they come here otherwise. Jay, would you add anything to that? Jay here, by the way, is the clerk for both the planning board and the zoning board. So he's probably the most knowledgeable person in the room about our processes.
I was just adjusting my hair, but the ZBA is a quasi judicial body. The planning board is the review body, and Ed is the zoning enforcement officer. So building permit goes to Ed. Ed makes an initial determination on kind of whether it's permissible as of right, whether it needs abbreviated site plan review, commercial site plan review, special use permit. All of those would go to the planning board, or if he says, wait, this isn't currently allowed under the zoning, then it would potentially go to the ZBA.
I think you'll find in dealing with just about any board in town that, as I hope you see from the tenor tonight, we're looking to be helpful. We're not trying to give you a hard time. We are required to follow the law. But beyond that, as I'm sure your experience with Jay has been, we try to be as helpful as possible to applicants and not make this an onerous process, which is why I took the time to share with you what the process looks like and how we're going to vote on it, and what the next steps is.
The questions you referred to, or the 5 questions that the state mandates about self-created hardship, those are the questions that will be asked at the next.
Yeah. For what it's worth, 100% of the applicants we check, yes, it's self-created hardship, because it is. So that doesn't mean it's going to get turned down by any means. Okay, well, thank you very much.
All right, so we'll see you in a
Do we
month.
have to go through any of this paperwork tonight? I don't know, we're gonna be, do we need to do anything else like what we did your assessment? Need to do any of that tonight, or is that just? Do we need to go over any of that before we do that the next meeting? I didn't know. So
We don't need to do it tonight. I have an expectation that everyone will have read through it and looked at it. And if you had any questions, now is the time to bring them up. And then we go through this process next month or thereabouts, and physically go through a checklist together.
I might stop down and take a look at it sometime. Or you see my truck there on shoot.
Do we have your permission to walk the property? Okay, thank you. And would you like to, I saw you didn't require to be there if we were to do that, but all of us like to go by the properties that are in question, just to give us a sense for, as Carol said, she went by it and saw the wetlands. So
You can look at this all night long, but unless you're standing there and looking at it, you get a better picture of what's going on.
yeah, thank you. We would appreciate it.
Look in the windows, they'll see one room.
You're right. Well, it was nice meeting you folks. We wish you the best of luck in the process.
Thank you for your
I'll
help.
see you in a month. You're welcome to stay, by the way. You don't have to leave. Okay, I got that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So can we do some procedural stuff in the application?
Yep.
Okay, can I get a motion to declare the application?
I'll make that motion.
Let me take this back.
No, you can watch that. You wanna come? I can give you the. I can even tell them the whole.
All in favor? And just for the board's edification, we're probably a couple of months away from this. But in the future, when we go through this particular part of the process, we will have in front of us a complete checklist that we can actually look at and say, yes, 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 which will, I think, improve the process. So there's no question about whether it's complete or not. Thank you, Jay.
Well, we still have to.
Yep, we still do.
it.
Yep.
Lead agency.
Make a motion for us to be the lead agency. Anybody object? Okay, so passed.
And then setting a public hearing for May the 2nd.
I mean, if you looking for a motion, I make a motion. To have that. Second.
When this meeting for?
Public hearing.
I'll put it here. All right, thank you.
I,
That's the 7 o'clock possible, right?
Yep.
Training, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll confirm when I.
I emailed out again.
Yep.
Locked out, so if you need to get your text.
I heard.
Gotta get somebody to set up another. Kind of see for a week, I was good to go, when I came back, I was locked out, and I can't get back. Before I throw it out in the yard and run over it. That's probably. I came back, I went to Tennessee for a week on the job, I came back and I can't get in. I called them and this and that, and they said, no, all the information that you give us, we don't, this doesn't jive with what we have. Last time I got locked out for 8 months. And then one day I sat down at it, and I just was messing around, and I was in. So you tell me.
Reorg. So the town board has approved the ZBA meeting dates for the 4th Monday of each month. So we now have a set date. And I get a motion in a second. To also adopt that as the meeting date.
Now, how does that fall every month? Should it be the last Monday of each month or?
It has to be the fourth because I think some months have the fifth Monday.
Right,
So if we say, you know, the last Monday, it doesn't quite work out.
Because the planning board does it on the first Monday, whether it's a short, or the first Thursday, whether it's a short week or not, right?
Every month has a first Thursday though, not every month has a fifth Monday.
We have the last one.
It, by saying the last Monday of each month, it changes the submission deadlines for each month and makes it harder
Harder for them to get. it back.
harder to like track and harder for me to advise applicants regarding the deadline. You know, like I would have to, whenever someone calls into the office, I have to know exactly how many months.
Even if there's never seemed to be any business, should I have that meeting that day?
So I've been in touch with folks canceling. And I know I can do a better job, but, you will hear from me if there is, you know,
I mean,
a meeting.
okay,
I
I know it's been a long time since we've had one, I don't know why, but I'm not arguing.
Right, well, it's because we haven't had any applicants. So
Yeah,
so the direct answer to your question is we will not have a meeting unless we have an applicant.
okay,
Or unless there is some unique set of discussions that I think we need to have.
Okay,
Then,
so we'll have a meeting the fourth Monday of the month, if there's something to do.
yes. That's a good way to put it, thank you.
I think it could just keep us all on an even keel. Either you or maybe Jay, and I'm sorry to do, I don't do more work, could say, no meeting this month.
Yes,
Yeah, I do, because of the ZRC, I do have to send those emails to you anyway. So like, in the lead up for this meeting, I knew that we were very likely to have a meeting today. So I said, I think we have an application coming. Okay, you know, I received it, we definitely do. So we know about May, the next uncertainty would be whether there's a to. So I can I get a motion?
I made it.
I'll second.
any objections? So moved.
Excuse me. An alternate, am I allowed to make that motion?
Good point. Will,
Motion that it be for.
Oh, that is-
second. Any objections? So moved.
I thought she could make it because she.
Oh,
yeah. Chair, or did it?
No, we don't, no, she would only be filling in for Sharon if by Sharon recusing herself, but only left two of us, so we have to have three.
So if you're short of form, then she.
Right.
Steps in.
Right, but alternates can and should, in fact, participate actively in any discussion. The only thing they don't do is vote.
Can I get a motion that Steve would like for me to share?
I'll make that motion. I'll second.
Why is that necessary? Jim? He is the chair, but are you thinking of leaving? or-
No, no, it's a process requirement. So the planning board had to, even though the town board asked it, we as a separate board have to approve our chair and our co-chair.
Yeah, it's kind of redundant. type of thing, but the zoning board of appeals and the planning board are supposed to be separate bodies. So in theory, the way it works with the planning board is the planning board makes the recommendations ahead of the town reorg meeting, and the town board kind of ratifies those. But because the ZBA doesn't have regular business, they should also kind of be internally independent. Vice Chair,
Fred Schlieberger.
You're not gonna go and do it.
That doesn't matter.
so is there a second?
Oh, absolutely.
Appreciate it.
All in favor?
I'm,
Opposed?
Are we really,
What's that?
you really want to?
I'm just kidding. I don't really want to do
Give them a
it,
hard time.
but I've been doing it for a long time, so we're not gonna keep up on this. Unless somebody else wants it.
So that's all the items for reorg. And then the last item of business was a discussion on the forms. I did send out an email around 6:20 with some comments from Nan. I had a conversation with her Friday of last week. I sent her the form Saturday. She did review them. I do have another meeting with her on May 12th. So we're gonna go over forms and checklists. If everybody could review the forms that I emailed tonight. And send me any comments, that would be great. And I would also like to direct everyone to kind of the Rhinebeck variance application form, which was emailed to everyone, I think, a week or so ago. The reason for that is that's kind of another municipality that has gone through and really tried to guide applicants through the process, including asking the applicant to make a statement for each of the 5 factors that you guys will consider in weighing whether to grant or deny the variance applications. So think about kind of what level of depth you want on the things.
I got one thing out, I remember you sent it, but I don't think I said it.
Yeah. Okay, I can resend. I'll resend the forms checklist and the comments that were received from them. I'll probably do that on Friday, which will give me a chance to kind of remind everyone that they should be working on it. And if you want to come by the town hall, I can print everything out for you.
Steve's gonna get it, I'm working on town, so.
I had one discussion item that I had sent out to everybody that I, in the spirit of transparency, I just wanted to make sure everybody was comfortable with, and that was that I got a request from Ed for an interpretation of the zoning law. And there is, in the zoning law, in addition to the typical setbacks that are required, there is a note that for the ag district, there's an additional setback that is 10% of the footprint of the building, which gets added to the standard setback. So if you've got 40 by 80 foot barn you're putting up, which is 300 square feet, the zoning law says, well, you gotta add 320 feet to the normal 15 foot side setback or whatever. And, the note I got from Ed, asked for clarification in that the zoning law says from a building on the adjacent land, what if there is no building? So I had a conversation with, so normally that would be an interpretation that we would bring to this board, and we would have a discussion about it, and we would, for our responsibilities, interpret the law. It seems so straightforward and obvious to me that I went to Nan and Hugh and said, what do you guys think? And their opinion was the same as mine, and that follows. So number one, let's be clear, that law only applies to the ag district because it has come up as a requirement in non-ag districts. So it's ag district only. Secondly, if there is no building on the adjacent land, then that requirement is no longer valid. And then the third thing that came up was the ZRC will take a look at the definition of what a shed is, because the original intent of the law was if a farmer was going to be putting up a barn or a shed that was a true equipment shed that would be noisy or full of chemicals or whatever, we wanted to give the adjacent landowner some additional protection. The problem with that is if you're just putting up a shed that's not an equipment shed, why would you need that additional setback? Plus, supposedly the applicant said it's not an equipment shed, I'm not going to put anything in. So no equipment is going to go in there, so it's not an equipment shed. It's just a secondary building on the property. So the ZRC will go back and relook at the definition of sheds. But I, in the spirit of transparency, because I kind of unilaterally made that decision without its board's input, I wanted to make sure you were comfortable with the decision that we came up with. And if not, we can talk about it. But it was one of those where it just seemed to be so obvious that it didn't require us having a special meeting.
Yeah.
That said, you've all got the authority to request input.
One thing that I was wondering about, like, take for instance, the gentleman who built that barn. Next near the.
Right.
Just discussing. And he said it's gonna only have equipment in it, and that's the way it's gonna be, that's why we want it closed, so it doesn't disrupt it. What protects the neighbors, and I always wondered this, is it our, zoning enforcement? He sells, maybe the son's not interested in living upstate, farming. He sells the property, there's a building there, next person, well, you know what? I'm gonna start raising animals here, this is a really nice farm, what protects them? So we went ahead and we moved it closer. Is there restrictions that are labeled in there to protect those neighbors?
Is that more than what we gave?
Because I don't remember ever saying anything about protecting.
It looks to
For that.
me like it's more than what we gave.
Yeah, it does.
Well, here is I'm gonna call it a mistake perhaps that we made. When we granted the variance, we did not say the variance is granted under the condition that the building is materially the same as what you showed us tonight. So what he showed us was a one-story building with a wooden floor. What he built was a 2.5-story building with a concrete floor and a bathroom and a living area. And
That's what I'm saying. So that appears to me from the distance, it was way more.
it was way more, but we did not,
You can't go after them for that, I mean, that's.
Ed gave him the permit to do it, so
Oh,
it's,
keep that in mind.
but I mean, it was a learning experience, I think, for us because
I knew that.
we trusted.
Well, it's just a point, like,
Yeah.
what He came to us saying that it was gonna be a shed.
Well, that's why I asked the applicant tonight to provide us with,
So the planning board sets out a resolution with, requirements. Am I correct or incorrect, Jay?
Yeah, conditions of approval. I will say that I'm not sure, because like the variances, area variances, follow the plan. So I'm not sure, and that might actually be, you're starting to delve into a legal question. But I do hear what you're saying. And I will see if I can have that answered, in discussions.
Yeah.
it's clearly states in the zoning laws that when we grant a variance, we have the authority to grant that variance with certain conditions. So the conditions that we granted for him, as I recall, were around lighting. We couldn't have a light burning after 10 o'clock at night, blah, 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 but we didn't say
I
anything.
remember no concrete. Yeah, no concrete, wasn't gonna be any that, and no living spaces at all.
Yeah, we did.
Stories lawnmower.
I don't remember saying any of that in that.
I remember no concrete.
Did you? I don't remember that.
Well, we would have to go back and look at the minutes of the meeting. I don't think we specifically mentioned that restriction, but clearly, I mean, it's the reason I asked the applicant tonight, can you please have a more complete sketch? And why I asked them, so it's only 2 stories, right? So that we're very clear that the area variance is based upon a building that is materially the same as the sketch that's shown to the board.
So you're saying that we have the power to put conditions,
Absolutely.
okay, so that if, for example, we all agree that, that here, that he should have gutters, let's if we all agree, we could put that in.
Gutters are a little gray area.
Yeah, I would say, Carol, it has to be something that is, I would consider material. So if we got into gutters, color of the building, that's probably a legal nuance that he could come back on, where it's something material, like it's 1 story, concrete or wooden floor, I think that's well within our purview and not going to be challenged. I think gutters and that kind of thing probably opens us up to, no,
I thought we required some water collection method of something coming off the roof.
That guy?
Remember,
well, that,
this is kind of lonely that required.
remember, somebody wanted me to dig a dry hole next to them.
He said it's moving away, right?
By the way, I did put gutters up.
Let's not open another can of worms.
Yeah, so Carol, that's now, it's a little vague because the zoning law is not specific about any restrictions on any covenants that we put in there to approve it, but I'm sort of assuming, and Jay, you're a lawyer, that is well within our purview around material things. I think cosmetic and, non-material things would probably open us up to a challenge.
Well, what that will do is they'll say that you're using your personal feelings towards it.
Right.
I don't like your green roof.
Right.
Well, it's none of your business about my green roof.
But as a condition, we asked for, let's say, an environmental engineer to check that the new building will not harm the wetland. Couldn't we do that?
I don't think we want to do that, because if you did that on one, you'd have to do it for everybody. And
Well, not everybody, just people who are adjacent to wetlands and have small enough lots that would possibly affect the wetland.
Yeah, but that's not gonna affect the wetlands. That's the problem. Everybody, when they have a wetland, the same water from the rain is gonna come off that roof, whether the roof's there or not, the water's gonna run down that hill. And they're gonna have grass on it and everything else. So all that does is it runs the cost of the job up. And it runs the cost of the town's lawyer and engineers and everything, and everything's always a mountain of a molehill.
So I agree with you, Fred, but here's the other point of view. Supposing someone asks us for a variance to put a building up. And the variance is to go from 150 feet away from wetlands to 100 feet. And the building is got a footprint of 1,500 square feet, so you're taking away 1,500 square feet of permeable land.
Yeah, but
That
that's
is-
now but each case should be
Right.
looked at on a case by case basis.
Right, but in that case,
But in
Carol,
this
I think,
case-
in this case, no.
That's what I'm saying. Every case should be looked at on a case by case basis.
Right.
I understand and I agree with that. But on something this small, it's.
Totally agree. So Carol, the answer to your question, yes. I think it is yes, we could ask for, if we thought that the concern was material. First of all, if someone, if they're 150 feet setback requirement and they're asking for 100, that's questionable to begin with. I mean, should we be doing that? But if we were to agree that we would consider it, then it would be reasonable to ask for them to bear the cost of an environmental engineer providing us feedback that would not have a detrimental impact on the wetlands. I think to your point, it's all about being reasonable, right? Just apply test of reasonableness.
Yeah,
Don't let a personal passion get in the way to make it
Yeah,
an
every case that comes before us.
Has to be individual, I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, you can't say every case that you have to have.
Totally.
Because you just, people will just.
That guy was just ashamed that something else was right in front of the lot. We totally pulling the play on. That's
Yes, yeah, and that was a learning experience for us and unhappy for the neighborhood, but are there any other questions, comments?
training. What's happening with all that?
So we still are required to get our minimum 4 hours of training a year. Hopefully we'll have this 1.5 hour session set up in May.
And well.
Yeah. So we'll try to do it here. And Jay had mentioned that before.
We'll count that as 2 hours, and it could potentially be May 22nd.
Okay.
First before the planning board meeting. And when I hear back from them.
That'll have to be pizza.
Good.
We're gonna be pizza that way. No, I mean, they do pizza. And the last time I came, I didn't know you were doing pizza, otherwise I wouldn't have rushed on the dinner. So I'm just asking if there is gonna be pizza, we want you to worry about that.
I think, Ron, to answer your question, Jay and I are pretty committed to making sure we at least offer everybody the opportunity to get between 4 and 6 hours. So if you missed a meeting, last year I ran, I think, 2 separate training sessions here where, and that was nothing more than going on the state's DEC website and finding something that seemed relevant. They take all their training, and you would come here and put it up on the big screen and, we get an hour. Okay, make a motion to close.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, thank you all very much. Jay, as always, thank you for your support here tonight. And thank you to the technology committee for running
This, please.